downtown. Otherwise, I got to go to West Seattle, and I don't want to do that.
Okay.
Who decided that 6:30 would be the last ferry out of downtown on a weekday?
I don't know.
That's
they
a horrible
they don't
decision.
run. Yeah, they don't run very many. I mean, you can go to West Seattle, and then you can get the car ferry, and that runs until like 2 a.m. But the one
you're talking the water taxi.
The one, yeah, sorry, water taxi, not ferry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Seattle Transit talk out of the way.
Yeah, let's get it over with.
Josh, how come we didn't go on a water taxi when I came to Seattle?
'Cause
Did you go on a ferry?
No.
No, they didn't do any of that.
I know.
Ian, I'm sorry I didn't show up. I would not have let you leave the city without taking a ferry.
Well,
Seriously.
he was here for like 19 hours.
It's the best view of Seattle that
Yeah,
anyone can offer is the ferry.
Yeah.
Are we ready?
Let's do it. Go for it. Intro us up.
Oh, that's me.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, let's get it going. Here we go. All right. All right, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the /MLS podcast. Playing host tonight, I'm Pete, username PunkRockPete.
I am Ian, username Armaskarhu.
Finally back from his trip across the transcontinental expedition. I'm Josh, username 97227ist, and with us this afternoon, depending on your time zone, we have our distinguished, I said extinguished. This is why I can't host.
This is why I don't speak up and intro myself, because I don't know what you do.
You'd rather watch me put my foot in my mouth. Yeah. Sorry, would you like to introduce yourself? I should just stop.
I'm the worst moderator of all time, Dan, username RemyDWD.
Yay! Finally got a moderator on! That
Again, second time.
Yeah,
oh, that's right. Oh, I wasn't here for one of these. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I wasn't around.
It's okay.
I'll just allow this to legitimize me, not the pod at large, because apparently it's already been legitimated.
Yeah, we don't have a whole lot of repeat guests, so I guess it's fitting that
There's a lot of people who just don't ever want to do this again.
No. It's the opposite. This is quite a compliment to Dan. We're inviting him for a second time.
Yeah, this one time we even... No, never mind.
Yeah. Dan, I'm intrigued about the shirt that you're wearing there.
So I explained it before we got started. For the viewers at home who can't see this, this is a black Adidas shirt with a Castro logo on the front. And these are the jerseys they gave us at the media game last week before the All-Star game. But this one is particularly funny because the black color represents referees. I was apparently misassigned to the referee team, and then sat there for 15 minutes wondering where the rest of my teammates were. And then they said, "Oh, no, you should be on this other team." So I got to keep my referee kit. There is a little All-Star logo on the back.
Oh, sweet.
And yes, I think the retail price of these Adidas shirts are $20. So thanks MLS.
Yeah.
Big perks.
Were you there in? It sounds like a quasi-official capacity, or?
So I was there largely for vacation purposes.
Okay.
I happen to like Portland. It's a fun town, and we get out there about once a year. But also, I was there, covering the All-Star game for my outlet. And if you guys saw the Kathy Carter AMA that we did in the middle of that week, I was actually at MLS Digital HQ in Portland, sitting next to her as we ran it, so that I could make sure that any inappropriate questions got filtered out, of which there were.
Always a key thing when you're on Reddit. And
Yes.
and you said for your outlet, would you care to plug that?
It's Gothamist.com. It's a New York news site that many New Yorkers know, but nobody else will.
Yep. I also am not, a former New Yorker, but I still read Gothamist every once in a while for the weird news of things that goes on in the outer boroughs.
We're very good at covering the weird.
Yeah, really, really good at covering the weird. I like it. Cool. I know that we had an agenda for today. Is that
whatever?
Pretty free.
It's free jazz. You're jamming with Coltrane here.
I have to jump off based on your jersey here. Not a half an hour ago, on my way to this very podcast, I saw the rare, elusive full kit wanker.
Ooh.
And here's the weird thing. Josh and I live in Seattle. Full kit wanker hanging out at the equivalent of the DMV, Philadelphia Union.
Well, that makes
Full
sense.
kit.
Wow.
Full kit.
You know what? I saw a guy dressed head to toe in Blue Jays gear when I went to go get lunch today. So I don't know what's going on, but yeah, something's up. Maybe it's just too many days of sunshine in a row, and people here are just cracking. They just can't take it.
Who was on the back of the Union jersey? I gotta ask.
Ooh.
There was no name, unfortunately.
No.
Full kit wanker like that? I don't know.
Yeah, he went socks and everything, Dan.
I mean, if you're gonna do it, like if you're gonna go,
but then you ruin the illusion that you're on the team. If
no, you put your own name on the back.
Yeah, you put your own name.
Oh, that's a good one.
Like if you get a player, like okay, you're sort of there, but doing your own name, that's the key.
Yeah. I'd always considered getting a player's name, but getting like an ironic player's name. I suppose with like a Timbers jersey, I would get like Chris Boyd or somebody like that, you know, to just be that guy who's like, yeah, whatever, you know, like I'm doing this.
I think there's a lot of Red Bulls fans who seem to keep buying jerseys with a player's name on the back, and then immediately they get traded or cut or something else. So I think most have given up at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So my Rafa kid is worthless? Is that what you're saying?
No.
that is gold. That is absolute gold.
The best was I actually saw a couple kids in Bellucci jerseys once.
Nice.
How? What? No, I don't want to know. Don't want to know.
Dan, I got to say, the last time you were on, we talked a lot about New York, and it was really cool to hear your insight since, obviously, the five of us that are rotating on this podcast don't have nearly the insight that you do. I'd love to hear a little bit about being a mod for our little community. I know that you kind of brought up the fact that things have been real interesting with the World Cup lately.
I will say the last couple months is probably the most stressful it's been on our MLS since I started. I was there, I started visiting around the 1,000 user mark, a little before it, I think, and joined the mod team a little after it because at that time we were sort of actively seeking. And the growth had been pretty steady over the years. Like, we all saw the 1,000 milestones like sort of tick by, and we did 10,000 before first kick last year, and we hit 20,000 before first kick this year. And right before the World Cup hit, I remember sitting there going, we're going to get like screwed over the next 6 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever it was, because we've changed our position. I'm speaking royally, but it's a lot of. I'm really just speaking for myself tonight. We had to make a decision a couple, maybe half a year ago, that we had always been sort of passively moderating. The community will take care of itself. But once you hit a certain size, the community doesn't, because if you look at the growth over the World Cup, and I know I sent you guys the traffic link before, we've been going up by about 1,000 users anywhere from every 10 days to, there were a couple of periods during the World Cup where it was every 3. And to grow that quickly in a sub this small means you get people coming in who haven't read the rules, who think it's just like every other sub, who think, hey, I'm going to post some memes, I'm going to post I'm new, which team should I support thread, and I think
personal favorite.
They're mine too. And so we very rapidly tried to come up with, you guys may have seen it, the sort of revised rules that we had right at the beginning of the World Cup, which is, look, we're going to do a daily thread to capture a lot of this stuff that doesn't actually fit what we're trying to do with the sub, and keep that stuff. If you want to match thread for Spain, Netherlands, like, there you go, because it's not appropriate for our MLS otherwise. And even then, like, we still got pounded with links. I actually compiled a list of some of the best, worst posts that we got, and so some of them are fantastic. And this was just me scrolling through and trying to find the funny ones today. Somebody posted, "This sub is a bunch of pansy shit," which I think that the post text was just like, worst league ever. That was just in the middle of the World Cup. I don't think we were playing.
And are you looking at their user history at all to determine any of this? I'm just curious what people like that, are these guys that are coming over from r/soccer? Are they guys that are coming over from r/UFC? Like, where?
You know, when it's somebody who's doing a troll post, we just nuke it and call it a day.
Yeah.
If somebody's posting like a, what was one of these threads? Not another who should I root for thread, which, despite the title, was another who should I root for thread. You know, I have sort of a canned response now, which is like, welcome to RMLS. We have a bunch of resources you might like to use, like the FAQ and the Newcomer's Guide and the Free Kick Friday threads, and please don't post this again. So, you know, and a lot of that got developed over the last month or two because we had to, because there was no other way to deal with this sort of weird flood. So the people who are posting meaningfully but against the rules, you know, we try to be nice to and say, like, hey, you know, the rules are here, you might want to read them, and go with it. If it's somebody who's just like flat out trolling, we'll just nuke it and not say anything. There's no point, because they're not there for an actual discussion about it. And the other thing that's really painful to deal with, but that we get a lot of now because the sub drives a ton of traffic, as it turns out, are people spamming their own links. You know, some soccer writer for some random blog has thrown something together and, you know, sneaks in a link to it and hopes they're not going to see it. And so that's where the posting history comes in, because people who tend to do that on a lot of subs, and it becomes kind of obvious from their history.
Or their submissions are all the exact same website, Soccerly.
Yeah,
yeah.
Well, and the problem with Soccerly now, you know, there was a lot of discussion of Soccerly about 6 months ago, but Soccerly has invested a lot of time and energy into hiring more people. I know the guy who runs Frost America is on as like their executive editor now or something.
Wow.
And they have a partnership with NBC Sports. So there are some legitimate pieces coming out of there, but there's still a lot of sort of blog spam stuff. So
And they save Soccer Morning.
Yes, and there is that, which, you know, leaves everybody feeling a little conflicted in their own special ways. So, you know,
Yeah, I know what you mean about like the blog traffic too, because I have a tiny website that I very occasionally use, and I got like 4,000 views because I got like 50 upvotes on RMLS, and it was awesome. But yeah, it's a huge driver of traffic.
Yeah, the league, some of the people from the digital office told me a couple of years ago that even at that time, which might have been 2012, might have been early 2013, that we were driving more traffic to the league site than Big Soccer was. And so that was sort of the moment where I'm like, oh, this is kind of, you know, getting up there. So, but, you know, even after the World Cup, we still get a lot of people who have come in and just will do whatever they want. You know, they will post I'm new, I have a very specific opinion about something, and, you know, there was this thread last night that I took a bunch of shit on, and somewhat justifiably so, where somebody just bitched about, you know, why is the TV production so poor? And, you know, it didn't read to me like there was any discussion, so I made a little snarky response, and that sort of spiraled out of control, and a bunch of people called me a dick. But, and I apologized and everything, but if you read it from our perspective and you see the junk that comes in constantly, you get a little sensitive to it, and you really want to. And we have a hard time actually differentiating between what should stay and what shouldn't, because you get the stuff that's on the line, and if it's right on the line, if you remove it, you're potentially, you know, killing an interesting post and somebody really wants to talk about it. But if it's just over the crap line and you get a bunch of new users who come in and see that and think, oh, you know, this animated GIF of somebody doing, you know, a skill move is totally okay, and we should post more of them, well, we're going to end up with a bunch more skill moves.
Yeah, it's interesting because you never know what's going to turn into a conversation, and I think the conversation about the production values of the broadcasts is legit, and it's an interesting one because, you know, there are a lot of things that go into why broadcasts look good. Some of it is stadium, some of it is how much money people are outlaying, some of it is just how many different angles you have, some of them is the experience of the. And I think those are all fascinating things to talk about. I was happy that someone wrote that, and then I saw it, and it was just like, I can't remember what it said, but it's basically like, looks like crap. It's like, oh, I thought this was somebody who like maybe had some, you know, maybe took a class in broadcast one time and was like, I know this, I think this, you know, because that's a great thing to talk about. You know,
yeah.
It is something that really sticks out when you watch MLS broadcasts, particularly the ones on. I find the ones on NBCSN not as as sharp as the ESPN ones, and the local ones are
Really?
freaking abysmal. Well, also I watch a lot of NBCSN that's where they're doing it out of Portland, and everything looks bad in Portland because there's nowhere to put the cameras.
Yeah.
There's no, it's just it's the stadium.
There's
nowhere to put the cameras because they're just like, can we put cameras here? No, you can't move 50 fans. Because that's actually a really big deal when you've got such a huge line of people.
Can we put the cameras next to the treadmills? No, we can't.
Right.
No.
Yeah. Like, so I mean, and that's another thing. It's like, there's a lot of factors that go into why some of the broadcasts look kind of strange, and I don't know. But I was happy that turned into a good conversation because you're right. It was a crap post, and you're looking at it going, this is a dumb post. Will it turn into something good, or will it just stay dumb?
Right, and
whoever knows.
Yeah, and there was a little conversation with Stephen MC19, who was on the moderation team briefly, and I met him a couple years ago. And it is very difficult as a moderator to get people to understand that, like, if I'm contributing to a conversation and I haven't, like, cited the rules and marked it as a distinguished post, like, I'm just shooting the shit same as everybody else. And, I love the league. I want to talk about the league. I want the league to get better. But I also want our MLS to stay like a good place for people to talk, and it feels like a losing battle a lot of the days, especially like the whole what was it, the Lupe Fiasco Jermaine Jones thing last week. We had 2 people submit that tweet where it was like, "Oh, Jermaine, come to Chicago. We got furs for the cold weather," and it was like, I looked at it, I'm like, this is a crap. Like, I understand that it's a tweet at Jermaine Jones. But if somebody posts every time a celebrity tweets at a soccer player, then that's all we're going to have. And so we nuked both posts, and both of the people complained via mod mail. Why did this get removed? And I said exactly what I just said, and one of them was like, "Oh, okay, cool," and the other one was like, "I completely disagree. This is newsworthy." I'm like,
it's funny that you think it's bad though. It's kind of like hanging out with a cop. Your cop like looks around and he's like, this city sucks. This city is full of horrible people. And you're like, no, it's not. What are you? Oh, you just hang out with assholes. That's why.
Yep.
So you're looking at all the crap and you're like, this is full of garbage. Whereas I look at it and I'm like, this is as good as a lot of them I go to. Like, and I spend times on like professionally rated ones like the programming sites.
Yeah.
And those turn into just, these are ostensibly intelligent people talking about their work, and it's garbage a lot of the time. I feel like it's far more well-informed and less opinionated and less just trash-talking, programming languages. It's not even sports. Like you're like, Pearl sucks. Anybody who's
oh shit.
Yeah, you're like, whoa, that's it. So to me, it always seems like such a wonderful community, and then to hear you be like, oh, it's full of garbage.
No.
Like, oh, he sees all the garbage. That's why.
If you feel the garbage, you're going to be able to taint it to it. Like I have to read on /new. I can't read just like hot because I don't care what's been upvoted. I just want to see what's coming in so I can deal with it accordingly. But I think a lot of the threads that we have, I think the Free Kick Friday threads have gone very well. I think MLS Rewind, who's a San Jose sort of freelance writer that I found on Twitter, his posts where he does the game breakdowns are fantastic, and I wish we had a little bit more of those. And I don't mind the goofy stuff. I don't mind people talking about EJ doing EJ things because that's part of the league. But there's a certain point at which you hit the threshold of, all right, if we let this little bit stay, it's going to send the wrong message.
I'll defend you a little bit as well, Dan, because I've got to say I have seen you be polite and patient, especially with so many new users, where you're not deleting everything and you're saying, hey, check out the sidebar. There's some great information there. And I mean, we've all been new to this community at some point, and some of us have been newer to the sport than others. And I think you guys are doing a pretty good job. I've seen in this week specifically, it's really relevant, I've seen at least 3 or 4 different users say, wow, I can't believe how good the quality is here. I'm coming from places like, NFL or hockey or whatever, which are these really famous, great communities for sports, and they're surprised that we are meeting that same level of quality. So I think you guys are doing a good job. Of course, there's going to be, dissent on what qualifies as news, but I'm I'm really happy with the community overall. It's why I spend the majority of my Reddit time on it. I'm browsing new like you are simply because I want to read more. And, I think it's been pretty good so far.
Well, thank you. I mean, we're holding it together as best we can, and I think we're going to keep doing the sort of annual review of the rules and see what makes sense to change. I think we're going to, maybe add some more staff soon, but we'll see. We haven't discussed that or anything. And you got to keep playing it by ear because it's a community, and the community is ultimately the arbiters. We can try and guide it, but if everybody ends up wanting to post garbage, then at some point we're going to wear ourselves out trying to stop that flow.
Yeah. Listen, before we move on to news, I have to address one more because you gave us a list of some of your favorite posts that you have seen since the World Cup.
Yeah.
So apparently the South Korean fans use poppies as a metaphor for eat these dicks. I don't even know where to begin with that.
So I actually saw that story outside of our MLS as well, and apparently there is some sort of candy in South Korea that if you throw it, it's some great insult because nobody should ever actually be eating them. I don't know. And yeah, there's this like 90-second video of the South Korean players showing up at the airport, and there's a modest, very calm, very rational crowd. It's South Korea. And then suddenly, like, somebody starts pelting them with candy. And it's just like, what? And they look deeply ashamed to have the candy thrown at them. Which, I think it's a great thing that happened during the World Cup. I think it's funny and weird. I incorporated it into my World Cup coverage, but it had nothing to do with our MLS, and so that's why we nuked it. Put it in the daily thread. That's what they're there for.
I will say I'm a little sad that the weird coincidence thread got nixed, just because I would have loved to have seen all of the snarky responses that probably would have made the OP cry.
The title, for those not looking at the document I threw together, is Weird Coincidence. Both the U.S. and Mexico beat a West African team in the first match and tied a Portuguese-speaking team in their second. Thank you. I mean, yeah. I suppose they did. Yeah. So, fun times in Modland.
Yeah.
Well, I bet another issue that you've had fun times modding lately has been the insane amount of Landon Donovan content.
No, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm looking at the spam folder now.
I've seen what's gone through, and that's all we talked about for days.
For that day, that was a terrible day to post a podcast, by the way.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Well, and we posted it late in the day as the information was breaking, and it just not great. So
I went on later that day, and it was Landon Donovan 1 through like 27, and then we were like 30, and I was like, oh, I guess that's what it's going to be like today.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. At least 10 Landon Donovan threads got removed.
Yeah. But it's, he's, I understand the enthusiasm.
Yeah, I totally get it too.
Everybody's like, I want to contribute something to this, and all I've got is this thing I put together in MS Paint 2 minutes ago, but
all I've got is
I want to contribute.
all I've got is the link to the goal world around the world, but I bet nobody's seen that, so let me post it again.
Yeah. Oh God.
So can we talk sentimentally about Landon Donovan for a minute?
I'm gonna put a time limit of 3 minutes because I feel like there's a lot been said in the last week, and I don't know how much else we can cover.
I bet Ian has something meaningful to add.
I might, and I think Pete, you do too, because his is the. Yeah, because his goal is just, like, ties into the story of how you got into MLS. Right?
It does, and I've told that story briefly on the podcast, and I have commented on it. So I will let you go first, and if it's relevant, then I'll tell the 30-second version of my story.
So the thing about Landon Donovan with me is that he's along with Eddie Pope, and he's had a much more storied career than Eddie Pope. He is the only American soccer player whose career I've seen begin and end who was like an icon. And he is the American soccer player, right? at this point in 2014. He is like the definitive, yeah. And so, though the World Cup in 2002, staying up until 2 a.m. when I was 12, and I'm supposed to be sleeping because soccer camp was the next day, but I didn't do that. And watching the goal that put away Mexico was like one of the, I was 12. I liked hockey a little bit. I liked football, kind of. I liked baseball. I liked all the sports pretty much equally. Soccer was a little bit higher, but that goal, beating Mexico, that release as a 12-year-old was what really put me into, all right, I'm an American soccer fan for life, forever. And, and since then he's done incredible things. I was a little bit sad to see him go to my biggest rival, the LA Galaxy. Historically, I know like we have a rivalry with the Red Bulls, but whatever. So
sure, all right.
Yeah.
Well, it was us in the Galaxy in the early days in the '90s, and that's who I hate. That's who I hated first.
I remember '96 Cup. I mean, that was a big game.
Yeah, that's who I hated first, and then I hated the Red Bulls a little bit. I hated them more when they were the Metro Stars because it was fun to call them the Metro Scum.
What is it with American soccer fans and the word scum? Like everybody seems to call each other scum. I know.
I've literally never heard it except for when we called them the Metro Scum.
Oh, really? You'll hear it a lot more on the West Coast. I don't know what it is though. It's like
mean enough, but it's not too mean.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like what I would say if I was a third grader, but I was afraid to actually curse or anything. I was like, scum. Like, yeah, like I saw this in a movie in the 50s. I'm gonna try it out. And see
as opposed to the much more highbrow flounders.
Yes.
Oh well, I mean all of them are fairly. All of them are fairly similar. I'm not sticking up for any of them because I hear
have that grade school thing going on.
Oh yeah, no, because I hear Portland people use it all the time as well. I'm just like,
isn't flounder just like a fish? How is that like? How is that? Yeah, how is that insulting?
Well, because Seattle was originally it rhymes with Sounders, and Seattle was a prominent fishing city, in addition to being a gateway to Alaska and a bunch of other things, and settlement.
Right.
Sorry, Pete, would you like to tell your story?
Oh, my story is similar to Ian's in gravity for my personal life, but is much different in kind of place in my life and setup. Where Ian was young and had a lot of sports that were kind of competing for his interest, and this is the one that pushed soccer to the forefront. Landon Donovan brought soccer to my attention. I'm a 4.5 year soccer fan at this point. I guess just over 4 years really, and I was well established as hockey being my number one sport and the NFL a little bit below that. In the summer of 2010, for reasons I can't even remember, a group of friends that mostly had no interest in soccer, probably just based on the hype, decided like, hey, it's on at a reasonable time. It's the summer. A lot of us are either, temporarily employed, not employed, have flexible jobs. Let's get lunch and watch, the U.S. games when we can. And so I got really hyped up for the team, for a sport that I'd never cared about. And we started watching the games, and, that goal heard around the world, that Algeria goal, it just sparked something. Like, in all my years of watching my professional teams flounder and not do very well, I suddenly I had a visceral reaction to that goal, and it really opened up a world of a sport that I'd never even considered. And it just happened that I had it was in the same summer that I was packing my things and moving to Seattle. This is what I was doing right before I moved to Seattle. I was hanging out in Sacramento with friends, watching the World Cup. I moved to Seattle, and a friend from college that grew up in Sacramento with me had been here since 2005, was an old USL supporter, helped found the ECS when it was, 40, 50 guys, and brought me to a game, and it was just great timing. So that goal, that Landon Donovan goal, I mean, I don't know what happens if they lose that game or don't go on. I probably still go to the Sounders, but maybe I'm not as open about it. Maybe I'm not as willing to go to the game with my friend as opposed to this moment where I'm as hyped as I've ever been. And so, yeah, Landon Donovan is directly responsible for the fact that my love of soccer has far surpassed any sport I've ever cared about. I'm on a podcast about it. I spend every moment thinking about it, reading about it, going to games. I spent 60 of my last 90 minutes yesterday screaming at Chris Penso.
As you do.
Landon Donovan changed my life.
That's actually not far off from how my story ended up, because I had been to some league games in '96, but then I fell out of love with it when I started heading towards college, and I feel very old today because Ian just told us he was 12 when I was graduating, which makes me feel great. But the goal gets scored and everything, and I'm like, man, I kind of miss soccer. Like, we should go to a game, because I realized that Red Bull Arena had just opened, and it's not too far from our house. And the Galaxy were coming the next month, and I'm like, oh, cool, I can see Beckham and I can see Donovan. And it was like right around the time that Henri and Rafa were just about to sign, so it wasn't because of them. It was like, I really want to go see LA play. Somehow I had a '96 LA Galaxy jersey that still fit me. I was very tempted to wear it, but I chose not to, which would have been very funny. And so we go to the game, and, ironically, that game, Landon playing for country is great because he's your asshole. But that game, he was just like a total dick. He was, back-talking the ref and hard fouls and all the rest of the stuff. And I was like, wow, that's not what I expected. But, fell in love with the atmosphere at Red Bull Arena and, recognized Henri's name and everything. And so that's how I came back to MLS. And I wouldn't be doing this press stuff or the Reddit stuff or anything had it not been for that game either.
So your hate of Landon Donovan is what drove you to the sweet, sweet arms of the MLS.
It was the enjoyment of Landon Donovan got me in the door, and then the dislike of Landon Donovan kept me in. There you go.
Huh. Well,
so
yeah, Josh.
That's the Landon Donovan. Oh, do you have a?
I don't have a Landon Donovan story, but I do. I just remember when he was pretty young. I think it was right after he came back from Bayer Leverkusen, which was like 2004, 2005, 2004. And I just remember like reading an interview with him somewhere because he was kind of the golden. No, wait, actually, this was before that. This was like 2002. This was around the time of the World Cup, and I remember reading an interview with him and thinking like how non-insane he seemed. Like he just seemed like a normal person as opposed to like, you would see and read things about the folks who were really big towards the end of the 90s and around 2000, like Ronaldo, who just seemed like a complete nervous wreck, the original Ronaldo, not the current one, and Rivaldo, who's an asshole, and David Beckham, and like all of these guys who were just like these really neurotic, like people who lived in this incredibly high pressure environment that seemed to just be making them either like terrified of everything or kind of terrifying. And then there was like Landon Donovan. I was like, this could be what American soccer, because I wasn't watching MLS, and I like didn't follow it. Went to a Revs game in 2004 and just did not enjoy it very much. And so like in my mind, MLS was just like I'm not even thinking about that. But Landon Donovan, he just seemed so like me, and I was like, this is interesting. Like here, and at the time too, I was kind of like, I don't know if my general disposition and attitude is cut out to be a world-class athlete, because I'm not insane, and most of those guys are, but he just seemed like such a nice, normal guy to be doing this thing that, to my mind, having grown up watching English and German and South American players and stuff, it seemed like something that was strictly the domain of lunatics who had been raised in like either this complete pressure chamber of you will be amazing, or like in some favela, and then here's this like nice guy from the suburbs in California, and you're like, he's like a pretty nice guy, seems pretty normal, like I don't know, we could go hang out and have a cup of tea and talk about whatever. I don't know. Talk about our feelings.
Landon Donovan, he definitely eventually had a lot of pressure on him, right? Because he clearly carried the fate of American soccer.
Well, and that was the thing. I think it was interesting because early on, but the thing is, like the pressure on him at the beginning was so different, and it was so much lighter. And it was interesting to watch him kind of grow into that and get a little haggard with it, and get a little burnt out. And that's an interesting. Like he's a fascinating character for that. But I just remember when he was younger, thinking like, he's like. Seems like a nice guy who's not insane, is like reasonably educated, and it's like he's probably got a real nice family. I remember thinking like, I bet his mom's real nice. Like, yeah. Anyway, and then I yelled at him when he was in Portland, and and I was very close to him, and I yelled very loudly at him. And then later, my brother was like, "Isn't he the star for the national team?" And I was like, "Just don't. This is fine. This is just how we do things. It's okay." You yell at people, and then later on, you go back to idolizing them and supporting them. Totally normal.
Yep.
Cool.
I think that's a great place to end.
Yeah.
The Donovan talk.
The Donovan talk. Yeah. He seemed normal, and then he got a little crazy, and now he's quitting. Like.
Hey, that sounds kind of mean.
That's I support the Timbers. We really don't have much going for us. We traffic in cruelty. Cool. So some games happened this weekend.
I want to talk about the All-Star game before that happens, though.
Yeah, there we go.
We beat Bayern. Does this mean we're World Cup champions? We beat Germany. America did. Woo!
I think that's how the unofficial World Cup works, actually.
Yeah.
So now it goes to Caleb Porter, the man whose hand was not fit to shake, apparently, and his team of ragtag misfits, also known as the MLS All-Stars. Yeah.
Dan, you were at that game. Was the whole non-handshake thing completely blown out of proportion, or?
I actually didn't see it, but I saw a bunch of booing, or I heard a bunch of booing from the crowd. I mean, we were up in this weird press area. I don't know if you guys have seen where the press box is at Providence Park, but it's basically suspended from the roof over one side of the stadium. So those of us who were not in the main press box were further back in the stands, so you really couldn't see what was going on. It wasn't like there was a brawl in the locker room area after the game or anything. But I understand. I sort of get why Pep was upset, and I also think it's completely ridiculous. Like, you're going to have the Cahills and the Alonsos and the Will Johnson tackles because that's how this league is. And, I got a great quote from Tim Cahill after the game about, I asked him, should Bayern really have been surprised about this? And he said, look, the fans have paid a ton of money to come out here. It's a matter of pride, and it's really hard to play at 80%. Like to sort of go for the ball, but not really. You as a professional, it's difficult, and especially somebody like Tim, who just sort of runs into everybody as hard as he can all game long. It shouldn't be that surprising that there are going to be some tackles during the game. I think that Caleb Porter could have done the Jay Heaps empty handshake with nobody, and it would have gone over a lot better.
So having been around the game, does it feel like a glorified friendly, or does it feel like a little bit more than that?
I think it still is a glorified friendly, but I think the guys who get named to the team, it's really funny to watch the players during the week because these are guys who are on all different teams and don't get a lot of chance during the year to see each other or hang out or anything, and you start seeing them like palling around and joking with each other and everything, and getting signatures from each other after the game on these little like memorabilia things they gave them. There was this great moment at the beginning where Diego Valeri came out for warm-ups and nobody else did, and so he's just standing there and like the crowd's going crazy because it's the Portland crowd, but none of the other players are on the field, and there was a camera shot of inside the tunnel, and you just see like everybody else just busting out laughing. Like Nick Romando and Aurelian Collin like pointing at him, just like nearly dying, and it's like they pranked Diego Valeri for no good reason right before the game, and it's nice to watch these guys who are some of the top in the league and are going up against each other every week, just like have 90 minutes to sort of screw around with each other on the field and get a result.
Yeah.
Now, I know there's something that sort of interested me is a lot of fans, myself included, sort of root for MLS. Like sometimes even a little bit more than they root for their teams, which is kind of
Weird.
me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did a whole thread about it, and people hated me for it. But yeah, but is that sort of? But there's like a general sense of league solidarity among the fans. Does that translate to the players at all?
I think it does, depending on the player. I think the players who go out of their way to talk about the league and what it means, do take pride in playing here and understand that, there's the league is not necessarily held in the highest esteem around the world, but they want to be a part of growing the game or whatever buzzword you want, and I think they do appreciate the fans. They do appreciate the sort of general solidarity with people supporting the league, because ultimately I think the fans and the supporters are one of the greatest assets the league has. If MLS didn't have the atmosphere as it did at this point, like, it'd be dead in the water, because there would be nothing else getting people out to games.
Right. It'd just be another American sport where the quality of play isn't as good as the other American sports.
It looked like the NISL does right now.
Yeah, or it would truly be the retirement league that it sometimes is accused of being, where like the reason that we're not the Qatar league is because we have actual there's like youth development and there's a lot of things that are changing the face of it, but I think the biggest thing right now is just that there's actual support, and there's actual people showing up, and there's actual people very passionate about teams. In a thing that is not universally accepted, and I don't mean it's not accepted, people are actively dislike the game or anything, but it is a little strange sometimes being I really like this thing, people are huh, what is that? It's in this city, you may have heard of it. So yeah,
I was really proud of myself about a year ago when I was with my hipster friend in a bar in Greensboro, and I was talking to some guy from Germany, or we were both talking to him, and my hipster friend was talking about all the music that whatever. He's like, oh, I'm a big music guy, because we were asked about our hobbies, and the German guy seemed unimpressed. And then he's like, well, what's your hobby? And I'm like, oh, I like soccer. He's like, cool. And I'm like, I like American soccer. And he's like, really? So
really? Tell me more.
So yeah, I got to out hipster my hipster friend, which was awesome.
Nice.
But I don't know really what the point of that is, other than to say
hipsters.
Hey, hipster.
I'm proud of being an American soccer fan. There we go.
Yeah,
so how do you guys feel about the MLS All-Star game? I know there's every year there's 70 threads saying why it should be changed, why it sucks. I personally like it. What do y'all think?
I think it's necessary. I mean, necessary is a strong word. I think it's a very good showcase for the league, and it's a really good opportunity for the league to, do really the only thing that is going to be a good coherent presentation of what the league is about for people who don't know anything. Because otherwise, it's
because it's not MLS Cup anymore.
What?
Because it's not MLS Cup anymore. Because that's you don't know that until 2 weeks before.
Yeah, I think it's something. Yeah, you really let people come there and watch it and be around the atmosphere, and it's nice to build up kind of a circus-y kind of thing around it, and they had all these extra events and stuff, but also it's a nice chance to say you've heard of Bayern Munich, or you've heard of Chelsea, now here is our league, and look, they're not horrible. I didn't. It's not even just justification. I think it's more just kind of banking on the. I mean, it's nice because, in a way, you get to bank on the European teams the same way that the European teams get to present themselves in a great marketing opportunity to sell more jerseys and, tchotchkes with their logo on it.
And to Ian's point about MLS Cup, a major advantage is the, American sports schedule in the summer. What you have with MLS Cup is you're going up against, kind of the final run for the NFL going into playoffs. You're in the full swing of basketball and hockey season. College football is going to bowl games. There's a whole lot of competition. And in July, the All-Star game doesn't have a whole lot. I went on a pretty solid diatribe last week about why I don't like the MLS All-Star Game and more broadly mid-season friendlies. And I will fully retract that after seeing the numbers. I still think mid-season friendlies for club teams are a bad idea. I don't like the fact that we still consider that necessary for money or, exposure. But after seeing how well the MLS All-Star Game did in the ratings and the exposure that it got, I can dial it back and say I can understand why that's a worthwhile game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
By the way, before this last All-Star Game happened, I was researching some Google Trends for an article that I may or may not publish ever, and for MLS specifically, and the highest that it ever got since 2006, I think, which includes the Beckham signing and includes the last 2 World Cups, was the after World Cup All-Star Game in 2010 against Manchester United. So that speaks to the exposure thing.
And especially with a name like Manchester United. I mean, that's that's huge. Obviously, I missed that. I wasn't into the sport at the time, but yeah. So yeah, I'm okay with it. I just, my number one concern is the fact that all these teams are kind of right in the middle of what I would consider the most important part of the season, and the potential of injuries. But it was such a good exposure for the league that I certainly can't argue against that. Anything else you guys want to talk about? MLS All-Star Game? Dwyer and Yedlin are the same person.
Yeah,
that's pretty
They're both
funny.
going to England. I mean,
Hey! Wait, is Dwyer going to England?
Wait, are they really?
No. Okay. Because I remember there was that Brentford put in an offer, and
yeah, and
they're like relegation fodder in the championship.
and Rob Heineman had that random tweet,
Yeah.
thanking him, and it was funny. Who knows?
Can someone tell me definitively what Yedlin's doing? Because I feel like we've got.
We're gonna get there.
Okay, can we get there now? Because I'm really curious.
Okay,
Spurs. He's going to Spurs.
We're gonna jump to Seattle news.
Hey.
Yedlin missed playing in the match. He did attend, but he was not in the 18 for the nationally televised game against the Dynamo last night because he did 2 transatlantic flights in 3 days when he flew to London for a physical with Tottenham, as it looks like it's pretty much sewn up.
Okay.
So the expectation is that he will continue to play for Seattle for the remainder of the year. And
really? I thought there was a deadline that passed.
There was a deadline for paperwork to be filed. They didn't have to announce that the transfer was done. They basically just had to be serious about it. So they must have filed the paperwork for the international transfer by the deadline, meaning that on that day, Tottenham had won out over Roma as the single club that they are now negotiating with.
Is it actually a deadline too? Because I feel like deadlines are relative doubly so.
You expect me to be able to explain the league's transfer rules?
Yeah.
Just, throw a dart at the wall and no, don't do that.
Yeah.
Alexi Lawless keeps tweeting about how he wants allocation money to be made public. Is that our best hope?
I appreciate Alexi continuing to fight for that, but I don't think the league ever will, because the league claims that having that number be a secret helps with negotiations between teams, because you don't want to know how much you have in the bank if you're trying to trade a player away.
Yeah, that doesn't seem to be the case in the other sports in this country that all have.
Well, but they don't have funny money.
Well, right, but
they also don't have to compete with the other leagues.
That is a huge thing, and I buy it that way. If you're saying look, we don't want club in wherever Argentina to know exactly how much money we have available,
how much they can outspend us by.
Well, no, I mean how much when they want to buy a player. I think the traffic from a lot of leagues is coming to MLS, particularly Central American and South American leagues now, and those guys don't have the luxury of knowing how much Lyon or whatever Norwich have sitting in the bank, whereas they could know at Toronto. So I understand it from that, but the whole it's also, I have heard many people say that all teams know how much allocation money other teams have. that's public knowledge amongst owners and GMs. They're not allowed to say it.
I mean, it's probably a much more open secret. I will say two things that I'm reasonably sure of, but of course this is MLS, so it could change at any minute. The allocation money isn't used to pay for transfers. All allocation money is available for is to pay down a player who's over the cap to the cap max hit, or for trade bait, or to pay down a transfer fee. But the league handles all the transfers themselves. So if there is a fee,
that's how DC got Espindola and Boswell and Eddie Johnson all on the same team.
Yeah, pretty much. Because they got so much allocation money for coming in dead last year,
and also
winning the Open Cup and getting a CCL berth somehow.
Yep.
MLS is weird. What was the other thing I was going to say? Crap. I have totally forgotten. We'll move on.
That's okay, Dan. It's a great transition point while we're talking about international transfers to the supposed second allocation order for DPs, an entirely different list of teams in a different order for a DP allocation.
Yeah.
I would say this was the point at which I threw up my hands at MLS rules, but I did that like 2 years ago. So.
If you're surprised by the idea that this is a thing, like, you haven't been around the league very long.
So my question is, does this make non-Seattle fans happier about the way the Dempsey thing went down because there might actually have been rules in place, or less
I think
happy
the only people that
because-
were pissed off about Dempsey were Portland fans because they were supposedly number one. I was a fan of Dempsey coming to the league to wherever, unless it were New York or LA. So,
yeah. And I don't think Portland fans thought. I mean, the whole thing was like, "Hey, we're gonna do a trade," you know.
That's
and
right.
I don't think
That's
anybody- Yeah, nobody thought like, "Oh, we'll actually sign this," because
they had just seen.
Well,
they just earlier in the year, LA trade Mike McGee to get the allocation spot for Robbie Rogers.
It wasn't an allocation spot; it was just his rights.
Yeah.
Because he
that's
left them
right.
free.
That's right.
Yeah.
Columbus had them. Columbus traded them to Chicago for a Duro, and then.
Yeah.
I've seen you make this exact point like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I think that was the only thing. You know, nobody like his salary is twice what Portland's team is as a total. So there was no thought that Portland was going to sign him. It was just like, oh, we'll have to trade for this. And it's like, no, we don't have to trade for this.
But it's not just the fact that Portland didn't get anything. It's also the fact that the league supposedly paid for the transfer, the fee.
Yeah, I don't think that's supposedly. They paid for it. I mean, they confirmed that they paid for it to somebody. But I think the thing that's interesting was, so that's something else, which then Merritt Paulson talked about just this year, is that there's a list of 10 people that, like, if you can sign them, you're allowed to sign them, and